Blah, blah, blah.
Okay, Dragon, my God, thank you so much for indulging me in my senseless, pretentious film school nonsense. All right, because we've been changing up the intro, we've been doing different voices and whatnot, and I got into my head, what would be funny? But, okay, Dragon, so this is one long in the making. In fact, we have held off on this for a number of years, specifically because, hey, 1922, you know what year's right around the corner? 2022. So, Dragon, alas, we have come upon the 100th anniversary. Not tonight, but this year of, Dragon, say it with me in the SpongeBob tone.
NOSFERATU.
God.
Scamp.
Okay, Dragon, I'm going to let you go first. What are your opinions about this movie? Do you have any background or nostalgia on it that you want to share? Just anything you want to get out there before we start breaking it down.
Well, so my introduction to NOSFERATU, I think it was just kind of like very much pop culture osmosis. You had the very iconic visual of like, okay, so when you think vampire, usually you think of Bela Lugosi, but the other vampire is Count Orlok, aka NOSFERATU, which. So I just kind of threw that in the history of the vampire lore and stuff. It's kind of like a column A, column. It's kind of two sides of the same vampire coin, as it were. And then over time, you got your other variations, pretty much of the same of Dracula, which you have like Christopher Lee and Gary Oldman and so on and so forth. Now, I think the real introduction to like giving a name to the visual was SpongeBob. Really, it was like very much like the whole NOSFERATU.
Of course.
And it really gave a name to him. I know technically it's Count Orlok, but I think the kids everywhere it's gonna be NOSFERATU, which is not inaccurate because he is a NOSFERATU. So So obviously, I think when you look at when we look at the movie NOSFERATU years back, it's like obviously Dracula stole a lot of thunder here. Let's be honest. I don't think anyone's going to NOSFERATU as the iconic vampire, but he does get it started though. Does get the ball rolling, which is important. It kind of introduces the idea of the vampire, which then kind of gets the proper kind of like cinema applied to it. And honestly, Dracula's kind of gets better when he's put into an ensemble piece, as Adam Stone Frankenstein would be a testament to. And of course, just Bela Lugosi in general. Look at Ed Wood, for example. People love Bela Lugosi is quite the character, even when portrayed by Martin Landau as Bela Lugosi. I need my money, Eddie. But I gotta be honest though. So I never full on. I've seen clips from the movie. Basically, I've seen the good parts of the movie. Because the saw movie in like film classes and such, and you see the clips when they show you like you're going through the film eras of you're watching the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which of course Nick Cage's favorite movie.
Of course.
But yeah, so it's so I kind of first time I watched this from start to finish. I think. It has a great visual take. Count Orlok has a great visual. And overall, there's a lot of great visuals in this movie with the black and white style. But he's a not so charming vampire. He's not. You're kind of losing the sophistication and kind of the allure of the vampire. Just as a character, that's how I kind of feel about him. But the movie itself, I gotta be honest, not great. I don't think it held up very well.
We'll break it down. I actually kind of agree with you.
I appreciate the ambiance, and here's the thing, though. I think it's rather a question of how much of that's the movie itself versus how much of that's just kind of the early silent era just not aging well. Which
okay, I'll put it this way, Dragon. I'll put it this way. Having recently rewatched Caligari, as recently as like a few months ago, I think Caligari holds up a lot better than this does.
I would imagine it would, because there's a lot. That one's like full on like Art Deco kind of gothic. That's the full ambiance and everything. That's an experience. This is like a movie, and we're introducing a vampire, and it has a little bit of that Caligari touch, but more like fingerprints of it.
It does, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. I definitely. So first of all, for me, the first time I heard of it, I was one of those nerds where by the time SpongeBob rolled around, I was one of those nerdy kids who actually knew who NOSFERATU was. That's not me trying to pat myself on the back. I had discovered him through, I believe it was probably like a History Channel documentary or something like that, like a history of horror type of thing. And it was specifically a documentary about like the early goings of horror. And I remember just being very fascinated about the idea of Dragon. That's almost like, I know Nosferatu is like definitely not lost media, but in my mind, as just a little kid watching this documentary and thinking like, oh, there's this forbidden version of Dracula where it's German and it was made like way before Dracula and it's even scarier apparently. And it was kind of like this weird guerrilla film that they made like under under the noses of the Bram Stoker estate. So there's this kind of like outlaw quality to the film. So I remember being quite fascinated by it as a little kid. But yeah, no, Dragon, I definitely agree. I absolutely think that certain shots and iconography like obviously hold up like a painting, but that's honestly about the only thing this movie has going for it. I do think that there's some interesting things in regards to Dragon. One of the most interesting things about this movie I'm going to get into with the background, which is its association to the to epidemics and pandemics, which to me is like the biggest takeaway beyond just the Max Shrek of it all.
There are some interesting kind of twists on the mythology here that did obviously kind of get lost and kind of like, well, I think got distracted from over time. So you got a little bit of that going on here, yeah.
Totally. So with that in mind, Dragon, you ready for just a wee bit of background?
Yeah, tell me a story, man. Go on.
All right. So Nosferatu. This was of course made out of the boom of the German Expressionist era, very much inspired by movies such as Caligari and Metropolis. The director, Mr. F.W. Murnau, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
We apologize to all the French and German people.
Indeed, yes. He hired upcoming screenwriter, again, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing this right, Henrik Galeen. Dragon,
Heinrich Galeen.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I find it really fascinating, the whole idea that he had from the jump, from the get-go, was not just like, hey, remember this Dracula book? Let's rip it off. No, my friend. And this is what I want to talk about. This, to me, is like the biggest thing that this film has going for it as far as the modern-day context. 1922, you know what America was just coming off of, Dragon?
What?
The Spanish flu.
Ah.
So with Bram Stoker's novel being kind of like a hit at the time, it was I think probably around 30 years old at the time, right? So it was like it was a modern day like pop culture touchdown. F.W. Murnau, I'm sorry, he really wanted to hit the cultural zeitgeist of the fear and panic that was felt during the pandemic. And that is exactly what tied him to using vampires as that iconography and as that sort of like metaphor and selling point. And Dragon, that's the thing that people don't give this. Like, I feel like that's the big context of this movie. Like, people just think like, oh, he just wanted to rip off Dracula. And yes, to a certain extent, yes, he absolutely ripped off the blueprint of Dracula, but it was for a deeper thematic purpose. Okay, so obviously there's some changing around the characters and setting. Most notably, we have Renfield, whose character becomes more of a villain. Harker's character, Dragon, this is kind of fun, I thought. The character in Nosferatu, hold on, let me pull up his name. His name is Thomas Hutter. Dragon, basically the director really wanted him to be just kind of like this boyish, bright-eyed, naive guy. And you can kind of see it, like that's why the silent film actor playing this dude is very, very much, hamming it up, with the exaggerated movements and stuff like that. Let's see, what else? Okay, the setting also, of course, moved from London to Germany. And Dragon, that's where we get into some of the darker elements of this movie's background. So Count Orlok, I don't really want to talk about this when it comes to the actual like breakdown of the movie. I think it kind of just it's an element that just kind of has to stick with the film historically. There's definitely some rumors that Count Orlok or Orlok. I'm sorry.
Well, Olaf is, I believe, inspired by Orlok, so it's kind of understandable you're going to get those two
Okay,
mixed up.
Count Orlok is just like a fusion of Count Orlok and Count Orloff or Olaf.
Yeah, old Count Olaf. No, that's what I'm saying. Count Olaf is inspired by Count Orlok.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so there is definitely some people who think that there is some anti-Semitic qualities to Count Orlok in the design. Especially like given the time period, this is like pre World War II, so anti-Semitism isn't even really frowned upon at this day and age. You got the hook nose, the ears. Basically, he definitely kind of like takes on the appearance of like kind of like
The
a
rat-like
Jewish
features, aka kind of the Jews being mice, essentially.
right, and so that's always kind of like been a controversy that sort of held over the film.
Right.
But Dragon, what isn't necessarily a controversy? It's just kind of like a fun mystery. Ooh.
What?
Max Shrek.
Yes, and of course, Max Shrek is Tim Burton pays homage to this in Batman Returns.
Of course. So Max Shrek, one of the most Dragon for my money, I think. Like Bela Lugosi absolutely brings all the charm, but I absolutely think that Max Shrek is the scarier Dracula. Like this guy genuinely disturbs me. Most of it is the makeup work, to be sure. But of course, Dragon, we have all those stories, and this is one thing I want to emphasize, Dragon, is that there is not a ton of resources out there to clarify what's true and what's fact and what's fiction just because it happened so long ago. Like there are accounts of Max Shrek like actually believing he was a vampire. I'm pretty sure what those accounts probably boiled down to was an early form of method acting for Max Shrek. But it's still cool, I think, if you think about it, that Shrek was able to fool his co-stars. This is at least how I read into the legends. That Shrek was able to get into the role and fool his co-stars so much that his co-stars were like actively convinced that he thought he was a vampire. And in turn, all these legends of like, oh, was Max Shrek actually a vampire? Was there something supernatural going on? Like, I honestly think it was like the birth of the modern method actor as far as like film acting goes. And I don't know, there's a really fascinating eternal quality to that. And because of that, I really feel like basically every time Orlok is on screen, I mean, yeah, in spite of course, the potential anti-Semitism, which obviously, we have to look at it through the historical lens, and it's, if it is anti-Semitic, obviously not okay, and we don't endorse that or anything, of course. But I just think, just from a visual iconography point of view, Dragon, you can't deny, like, all those shots of Orlok are just pure cinematic, like Dragon, they're like the definition of like every frame is a painting. Because they're composed so well. Orlok just looks, the makeup is just so iconic. So yeah, that's about all I have for background, Dragon. As far as, like I said, I really just wanted to hammer in the whole idea that this is oftentimes kind of like cited as like basically just being a Dracula ripoff, but there were bigger, kind of like more lofty. I would say that there were more lofty ambitions behind this movie than there even were for the Lugosi Dracula, just as far as trying to shine a light on something that was going on with society at the time with the pandemic. So,
right.
Very interesting, very timely history for this 100-year-old film.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, 100 years later, who knew we'd be back to square one?
Indeed, indeed. All right, Dragon, you want to start us off with the breakdown?
Yeah, sure. So, of course, I guess just in kind of laying out our premise here, again, rather straightforward. Okay, so Mr. Hutter here, he's sent to Transylvania to sell Count Orlok. a house, and not just any house, a house that's right across from vampire neighbor.
I love that detail. I love the detail of like just it's so humble, right? Just like, oh, I'm gonna just sell him this nice house that's right across the street from ours.
Yep, and then basically he learns that the town fears this guy as he's like
Mhm.
getting closer and closer to him in Transylvania. I gotta admit, so here's where some of the kind of the silent film stuff's kind of, at least this one's more of a detail with the writing, I think, and maybe you interpret it better than I did here, but it sounds like where they had this thing where they kind of mentioned like a werewolf
Mhm.
in town. Now to me, this is I'm assuming this is like pre the mythology of the Wolfman becoming big. I don't, obviously it's before that movie was made, but I'm just wondering if like the whole mythology on the werewolf, Wolfman thing was kind of like a thing yet, or if the werewolf was just classified as like a giant kind of carnivorous wolf at the time. I'm not sure, but it just felt. Here's the thing: it felt like a weird nod in that it sounds like there was a bit of a setup there that no, we're going to be afraid of the werewolf instead of the vampire. Or if, like, I don't know, I didn't quite get the. I know they're going for everyone in town is scared of Orlok, but I don't think they really sold it as much as like, yeah, there's a werewolf out there. Be careful, young man, because again, we have like limited dialogue on the title cards.
No, I hear you. I feel like the werewolf thing to me, I almost kind of read as like I feel like Dracula does it better with the whole like listen, creatures of the night.
Yeah,
It almost is just kind of like an ominous sort of like, to me, I read it as like it's kind of just leaving the imagination of the audience up to interpretation of like, oh, we're dealing with Count Orlok, but there might be a bunch of other shit out here that we don't even know about. Does that make sense?
yeah, sure, sure. Now, also, we probably should have mentioned this too. Because given this is the 100th anniversary, Nosferatu is in a very unique position. It's public domain, which so
Indeed,
rarely do we get to
indeed.
see properties like full on, like like public domain. Like this. So yeah, what kind of benefits of 100 years?
We
So
have Koski in the Koski Productions in the comments just saying Nosferatu is the type of fella that would look you straight in the eyes and bite ya.
So that brings me to my next. So let's look the next thing. So here's my problem with Orlok. Again, visually very cool, very scary, especially when he's full on like like on the ship and everything. He's doing stuff and he's doing the awesome rise from the coffin. That's all wonderful, but it despite the great visual, there's no you lose all subtlety with Orlok. You don't have any like Lugosi had subtlety. There's like kind of like an elegant kind of like upper class kind of charm. Like there's a guy with a cape and a fashion sense that the women might dig.
Uh-huh.
Now on the flip side, I think the fact that everyone in town suspects and is scared of this guy, and the fact you look at this guy the only difference is he's wearing a hat. Otherwise, same guy.
Right,
Okay,
right.
wearing like a little turban hat saying it's midnight, come in, food. It's like that's what I'm saying. That's like the only flaw I really have with Orlok is that there's just no subtlety, and I don't know whether that's just like anti-Semitism. He's still going to look monstrous. Ooh, I don't know. I don't
No,
know. Yeah,
I definitely hear you on that
he
front.
can't really
Yeah.
blend in well. Is my point.
Uh-huh.
Also, now here's the other thing too. So with this movie, this is kind of more of a silent movie handicap. But I don't know. It's an interesting thing looking back on it, where you have we have a lot of broad acting choices, which is kind of like the campiness of the 20s, where you have like, okay, well, we only have so many words of dialogue that are going to be like on a card, and then the narrator essentially. So we're going to have to really kind of fill in the blanks and kind of convey. We have to convey things because we don't have a smart audience yet. So it's like, okay, he's a bloodsucker. So what are we going to do? Oh, I've cut my finger. Oh, let me, give me. It's like, he just jumped on that
It's
sucker.
absolutely not subtle, but like I don't know. I think I might be coming at this a little bit more forgiving of the silent film element than you are.
Well, I'm not saying. I'm saying I'm bearing it in mind that it was a different time. You got to do that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Like again, I feel like Dr. Caligari is kind of like the benchmark. But Dragon, trust me, I don't think there's a better silent film than Caligari. I've looked.
Yeah,
Like
probably. I think you're right.
Caligari is pretty much the gold standard as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Bicycle Thief is really good too, though.
I'm just saying, as far as like horror / German expressionism is concerned.
Right. Oh well, sure. In that case, yeah. Well, you're not going to find many other containers in that parameter.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, like Caligari still holds up. I feel like all the other films in this kind of genre, you're gonna have a little bit of growing pain when it comes to like having
Well,
to.
sure. I'm not saying I'm gonna like hold it against it. I'm just saying it's just sort of like he's really hopped on that guy's fingers fast, and they freaked out. Like he should be leaving at that point. Now, like, okay, I'll stay the night. Now this is here's something that's really clever. But I feel the filmmaking. I'm not saying the filmmaking itself, but I'm saying like the way we capture and preserve film really failed this moment. I think. I wonder what your thoughts are. So, I love the paranoia over the mosquito bites on the neck. The guy wakes up the next morning. He has what he thinks are like 2 mosquito bites on his neck. So I'm looking. I'm like eager. Like, okay, we're gonna see like the bite marks, traditional vampire visual. And I mean, did you see Did you see the marks? Because I can barely see them.
No, again, I kind of feel like that's a silent film thing where because the character's talking about it's kind of just meant to imply that it's there.
Do you think it's like they couldn't show it, or do you think it just was not captured well because it's like 100-year-old footage?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I think they probably didn't have great makeup at the time, and so whatever they had just was even more smudged by how grainy the footage is, if that makes sense.
All right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I kind of chalked it up to the actual film stock, but I don't know. But it might have been like a makeup concern too. Plus, but yeah, it's a. I do love that conceptually, the idea of like a guy wakes up the next day after he's run to this creepy guy. It's like, oh god, did he bite me, or are just like really bad bugs or like ticks or something here? Like what?
Right.
All right, let's see. So Koski, in the comments.
Yes. Okay. He says, let's see. There's this weird meta movie about the filming this movie, but the idea is that the guy that plays Count Orlok is actually a vampire.
Huh.
Yeah, Kosuke, actually, I didn't bring up that film, but I brought up the whole like urban legend of Orlok being a vampire. I don't know if you caught that.
So they must have done a movie based on that urban legend then.
But yeah, the urban legend of him being a vampire is it's pretty well known. Like it's like a pretty famous like Hollywood ghost story.
I could be completely misremembering this, conflating the two because we keep mentioning Caligari, but wasn't there a time where Nick Cage was in talks to play? Am I thinking of the current thing? Are they doing like a Dracula movie with Nick Cage, or is he actually going to be Nosferatu?
Well, the current rumor is what you might be thinking of is
Renfield?
Renfield maybe. And then there's also the guy who did The Lighthouse is also going to do. Apparently, he's going to do a version of Nosferatu with Defoe as Orlok.
Okay, so that's what I'm mixing those two up. Okay, so
which I would love that though. Like, just goddamn give that to me. Just inject that right into my eyeballs, please.
Right. So Nick Cage is playing the actual Dracula, where we're going to have Defoe as Orlok. Okay.
No. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, the Nick Cage Renfield movie is like a Renfield like spin-off type origin story thing.
Well, I'm not saying he's going to star in it, Tammy. Isn't he going to be in it as Dracula or no? Or is he playing Renfield?
He might. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Okay, regardless.
I thought it was like I thought he might be doing like his own side project with Renfield.
Okay, well, anyway.
You want me to Google it?
Well, at this point.
It is a 2020 film, Dragon. 2023 film.
Okay.
It's just a standalone Renfield film, and it's directed by Chris McKay.
It doesn't say who's in it.
Nick Cage.
Yeah, Nick doesn't say who he's playing.
Renfield.
So he is playing Renfield.
Or I'm sorry, no, he's playing Dracula.
That's what I just said.
I'm sorry. Okay, yes, and Nicholas Hoult is playing Renfield.
Okay,
sorry about that.
Anyway, so let's talk about Mrs. Hutter.
Yeah, this is where the film for me kind of falls apart because I don't know, any romance in the silent film era is it's just hard to convey, Dragon. Honestly, the only reason I feel like something like Phantom of the Opera or Hunchback works as well as it does in the silent film format is you're already kind of pretty familiar with those stories and those characters. But here, it's like, obviously, the general dynamic of Count Dracula and the bride and everything, but I don't know, man. It's just hard to convey good romantic chemistry and interactions through the silent film medium. Like, it's nothing against her, it's just, it just is what it is. It's just kind of like the nature of the format.
I think conceptually, I like what they were going for here because going by again the text that they throw up on the screen, it sounds like, and I'm not saying I don't think this was fully conveyed effectively, but it sounds like what they were teeing up is like, hey, at the end of the day, the wife is going to sacrifice herself by willingly letting him. Because we have a title card saying like the only thing that could basically really conveniently the title card saying the only thing rumored to stop a Nosferatu is if someone would willingly give their allow their blood to be taken so he'd be distracted and then the sun would immolate him. Essentially, is what that title card says. Now, unfortunately, I think the way they shot that, it seems like, hey, don't take my blood. Like, that's not really sacrificial to me. It's not really take it.
No, like, I think that's the thing. It's like, I really do think it's a good, like, on paper, it's a good tragic ending. But I agree, it feels very rushed. Like, it feels like, wait, what happened?
I didn't really get like the whole sacrificial nature. It just feels like she was like, okay, victim, man, just bad timing. Just real convenient. That's what it feels like.
Totally, I'm with you.
I have to assume they were going for the thing as written, but anyway. So overall, it's kind of because of that. It's a bit of a strange plot line. I do like the setup though. Like, okay, Orlok sees the little picture in the locket. Your wife has a lovely neck. Nice, and that leads to more ending with her. So those two, I like how those two kind of plot threads tie together, ending and the little setup there. It is, I think it's weird how she can like what's going on with her every other place in the movie. Like she can sense her husband, and then she's like just walking on the balcony all funky, and then it's like does she need to be watched? Is she ill? Like what's I don't get it. Yeah, so a lot of the kind of the filler stuff. It's an hour and 20-minute movie, and it's silent.
Well, let's talk about, for me, honestly, I think besides just like the obvious, like it belongs in a museum iconography of like, some of those iconic shots and the shadow work and everything, which I don't know, to me, like really speaks for itself. I don't even really know how much we have to say about that. The sequence of the movie Dragon that honest to God really did get under my skin was the ship sequence.
Yeah, the ship sequence. I mean, I'll tell you the coolest thing about the ship sequence. It's the fact that we have like a really good reason for how Orlok gets from point A to point B. He's on like a corpse ship essentially. It's a ship full of dead bodies. And he's in a coffin, as we've well established, and so that's how he gets from point A to point B, and that's really neat. I mean, I forget how we didn't. Do you remember if we did that in Dracula or not?
We had Dracula, but we do not like have the whole thing of him, basically being a serial killer on board the ship and systematically like killing off the shipmates and turning them into his undead army. We definitely did not have that element in Dracula.
But we didn't have the. But did we have him like just transporting himself via the coffin? Was that?
Yeah, we had him transporting himself via the coffin, but that's about it. It was basically just the idea of him transporting himself via the coffin.
If I recall, on the ship we do the cool thing where he does that. Doesn't he emerge from the coffin like he does that awesome thing where he flips up.
But we don't really make a thing of it like we do in this movie.
Yeah, no,
like
you're right.
This movie, I feel like it's obviously where most of the pandemic type stuff comes into play with the with the rats and everything, and just kind of like the general like harsh conditions. And I don't know, man. This sequence is the most real world horror for me. Just the idea that there's this count that's just like systematically just killing off his entire work crew. I don't know. There was something very disquiet. Like Dragon, I will say I am one of those people. I don't know if you're the same way, but I'm one of those people. I wouldn't call it a phobia, but I do think seeing old footage, like footage that's like, let's say like more than like 75 years old. Basically the whole idea, that whole kind of psychological concept of, oh my God, everyone in this film, everyone that I am seeing in these images is long since dead. Dragon, I have that. I have that pretty hard. That whole like it's hard for me to like psychologically separate that shit. So, I think that alone kind of makes this a little bit more intense for me. Just that kind of like psychological like dissonance. Yeah. Really quick, we have Koski Productions in the comments. Once again, he says, you know how some modern movies choose old black and white as stylistic choice? Wouldn't it be cool if someone tried a bit with silent movies? Well, Koski, I'm going to go out on a limb. You know about The Artist, right? That actually won Best Picture back in 2011. That was very much a silent film homage. I would love to see something done with German expressionism, though. Like, that would be fantastic. Oh my god!
Do you think Cage would remake Caligari?
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty much perfect as is.
All right.
You know who I'd like to see remake Caligari?
Who?
Giacchino.
Yeah.
Just saying.
No, I'm down for that. Yeah,
I think Giacchino could be our new horror guy.
Well, I think right now they desperately need him for Blade.
Well, yes, absolutely, no question.
But yeah, definitely get him to that eventually. But I mean, right now,
Michael, please.
Of course, it's so funny because you have like Michael Morbius, so it's like,
oh my god,
Felicia, Michael.
And then Jared Leto shows up. No, not you, Jared. Get the hell out of here.
Oh, he does like the sad Hulk music.
Go ruin the Haunted Mansion movie, you weird fuck.
I will. Give me my hat.
Oh god.
He's just walking out there, dragging the hat on the ground. It's like weighing him down. He's like,
oh my
I don't even want to be in a haunted mansion. I'm gonna make everyone suffer for being on.
Okay, yeah, Koski says he completely forgot about The Artist. Yeah, that's fine. I figured you knew about it.
Yeah.
But yes, your idea of the German expressionist homage. You know, if Tim Burton ever wanted to actually be a filmmaker again, he could do something like that. Saying, but anyways, that was harsh. That was like more harsh than it needed to be. Okay, so yeah, where do we want to go from here?
What's about his weird assistant, kind of a Renfield film? Like, this guy wasn't legitimately, was he called Renfield in the credits, or like?
No, he wasn't called Renfield in the credits, but in it is noted that, you know, in documentaries and stuff, that the character is basically the Renfield fill-in for the story.
Yeah, I don't think he translated that well. I think
I do not either. I actually think he's a pretty weird. Dragon, I think the whole idea of him is he's supposed to be like a what a twist type of moment. But I just don't think it works because you really don't know much about him beyond like, oh, he's trying to sell Orlok the house.
Yeah. Even so, I mean, was he the boss? Because I'll be honest, he kind of looks, they made him look really wacky at the end. I kind of forget if he was. I thought for a moment, wait, is he the boss that sent Hutter there, or no? Or
yeah.
So that's the same guy. It's the boss. Yeah, it's getting weird by the second. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like I said, I feel like it's supposed to be like a what a twist type of thing. Like, oh my god, the guy that sent him to Orlok is working with Orlok.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think it translates.
It does not translate. No.
He's Diet Coke Renfield.
And Dragon, it's kind of funny how I feel like the wheels have been or the roles have been switched here. Because I think you and I both agree, the original Dracula, Renfield, arguably besides just the general pop culture impact of Bela Lugosi's performance, maybe the best thing about the whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, the Dracula movie, all you had was Lugosi and Renfield.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Koski says, well, if Tim Burton ever wanted to be a filmmaker again. Ouch, I felt that, and I'm not even Tim Burton. Yeah, Koski, I honestly feel a little bit bad for that.
Tiki, remind me, what precisely did you say about Tim Burton?
I said if Tim Burton actually wanted to be a filmmaker again, he could do something German expressionist.
You know, to be fair, he did rail against Disney recently, saying, I'm not making another Disney movie again.
He's doing the Wednesday Addams show now, which I don't.
Well, are you sure he's doing that, not just producing it?
No, I don't know how involved he is, Dragon, and I don't even.
Yeah. Look, unless somehow we can revive Raul Julia, I'm not interested in the Addams Family. So.
Right.
That's the only way you're going to bring back to the Addams Family is if somehow we brought him back to life.
I mean, it's like we just had the freaking animated movies, dude. You know,
or if we put Oscar Isaacs in live action as Gomez Addams. That's the only other way.
I just don't care. I just don't care.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right.
So, okay, so again, weird system not really doing it for us. Let's see. Okay, so here's something with the structure. Now, okay, so we should have mentioned this earlier, but in in the silent era, silent era, you have this in Caligari as well, but just in a lot of the earliest stuff in silent film, they had like I forget if the technical term is. I think it's probably an actual term. I don't know if you recall it or not. They have like the gel color, or the version that Tiki and I
Mm,
watched, because there are a lot. Now we should have mentioned this. Is a bit I was going to mention earlier. There are a lot of versions of Nosferatu out there in terms of like they recut, they sped it up, they put it all in black and white.
yeah.
Yeah, you can actually watch this movie. I looked into this. You can actually watch the entirety of the film without music. I think on Wikipedia.
Oh wow.
In black, it's in black and white though entirely. So that's the thing.
Uh-huh.
So it's like the whole thing's there.
I mean that goes
Regard
to show how accessible it is.
again the whole the whole public domain thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, it's this. So the version we watch, I believe, is the oldest version, at least the oldest version we could find, which again is from 22, and it has like the old kind of the old Birth of a Nation kind of like black and white effects, where you have like gels, I'll call them, with the purple and the yellows and the grains, and you have like different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically,
They're
yeah,
all meant to simulate different hours of the day, different lighting moods.
yeah, which I feel,
Does
unfortunately,
not work great.
that's a thing, and here's the problem
I
when you
feel
have
like
a
it probably
movie.
worked a lot better in the, like back in the time when the visual language of film hadn't really been established yet. But,
Sure.
we're going on, like, obviously this film is 100 years old, Dragon. So we've had 100 years to build upon these visual techniques. So yeah, it's definitely not going to look as good by its very nature.
The problem here's I'm not so much perturbed by the shifting color. What bothers me is that we have a movie in which we have a vampire, and it's
I
a
think it's
big plot.
genuinely hard to keep track of. And I agree with you. Yeah, it does become a problem.
Yeah, well, what I'm getting at, Tiki, is that it's a vampire, and the central point of our story is the weakness of the vampire, which is daylight. And
Right,
if we can't
right, right.
establish when it's daylight and when it's not
It
daylight,
drives me
because
crazy. I know.
it's
I
like
know.
when we
Like
have
I
shadows
don't blame the film, but yeah, it's like I don't want to call it a weakness of the film, but it's definitely one of the more challenging elements of watching it.
yeah, so it's like when the endings happen, he's like, okay, I guess it's like it's about to be daytime because they all have shadows still. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
a fully lit room. I don't, I don't know. And then of course he disappears, and it's an old. I'll admit for the times it was rather impressive. He just kind of fades away in smoldering fire on the carpet.
Yeah.
Yep, and
I do
that's
think it's interesting that they saved the iconic stairway shadow shot until pretty much the very end.
so that's the coolest thing in the movie. Again, in terms of how Orlok looks when he's like
There's the two
full on.
shots, Dragon. There's the stairway shadow, and then there's the shot of him in the doorway with the coffin doorway.
Which of course that brings about the whole the whole Nosferatu.
Yes, of course, of course.
I gotta tell you that I just love the delightful nature of like when we see Nosferatu in that SpongeBob clip, he smiles like, "Aw." It's like if only Nosferatu could actually be that friendly, right?
Yes, yes.
Like if only Nosferatu's a guy you could have Count Chocula with in the morning. Wouldn't that be nice?
Uh-huh.
That'd be a cuddly image around Halloween, I think. Anyway, so here's something.
My friend Nosferatu.
Hey, Nose, you want some cereal? What
Oh, Dragon, by
cereal?
the way, that reminds me. Do you know what I titled my my notepad document that I used for my notes?
What?
Notes for Ratu.
Okay, that's good. I like that.
I was
That's
quite
good.
proud of that. I was quite proud of that.
I actually should be proud of that one. That's good.
All right.
Anyway, let's see. So okay, something we should talk about because you kind of teed up at the beginning. I guess perhaps like some closing points here. The again our real life parables in terms of like we treat vampirism as kind of a plague, which
Mhm.
obviously does have the similarities to today, but it's also like a cool thing to see sometimes, like in the Batman versus Dracula, for example. In that movie, we have like we are trying to cure the actual vampirism, and so we don't see it necessarily. It's kind of a spreading plague amongst the people of Gotham, and then bite other people, so it's ad infinitum. So we definitely see at least the beginnings of that sort of idea here, which is really cool and something we don't do in the Dracula movie. The idea of like we're treating it like the plague, which again is kind of where like vampirism is kind of coming from.
Right.
So that was a really cool deal. I mean, I think the security on like we won't let anyone off the ship who is infected is rather lax, but sadly, real life would beg to differ.
Totally.
But the other thing too is just the mythology of the vampires, and another additional thing. I love the fact there's like I think honestly the coolest detail in the movie for me. There is soil and dirt in the coffin, because according to vampire lore, when they're really leaning into the whole living dead aspect. So this is where he was originally slain. So the basically where he was buried, he has to have that dirt in there so he can retain his vampire strength and everything. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of old school kind of like vampire trickery in here. I feel like this movie is like slightly more faithful to the old school vampire rule book than the Dracula movie was, as far as like those types of rules go.
Do you think it'd be more? This is gonna be a ridiculous question. Do you think Orlok could be more convincing if you just put more work into the whole human guys? Like if you wore toupee?
I don't know, Dragon. Like it's really the face, right? It's like I hate to say it, but it's like you got to get like a nose job or like get some dental work done or something.
That's what I'm saying. Like I know it's probably
like you got to go. You got to go the cosmetic route.
Like it's probably before we had something like sunglasses. But can you imagine if he's wearing sunglasses and like a trench coat with like long with?
Dragon, I think the best you can do is to basically make him up to look like. Basically, like some sketchy looking Russian guy who might be hanging out at the landlord's house in Spider-Man 2.
Mr. Dick, he'd be friends with Mr. Dickovich.
Yeah. Like, I think that's about the best you can do. The best you could hope for is like one of Mr. Dickovich's sketchy business associates.
I was saying, imagine this. Imagine you had Nosferatu with like a toupee and a hat and sunglasses, and he'd have like a turned-up collar that would mimic the Dracula cape.
Oh, God.
That's how you legitimize it.
Oh God! And of course, in the Munsters, we had to do all the shit with Nosferatu that I don't even want to drag through the mud.
I met that.
This is a celebration. This is a celebration.
Yeah.
All right. I don't even know why I brought that up. I'm sorry. The Munsters. What is that?
Well, the Munsters has the Nosferatu in it, who basically is Richard Brake in a Nosferatu get up. He's also the scientist somewhere in that.
Dragon, the Munsters 2022 is not a thing, don't you know?
Okay.
It doesn't exist. It's just an old sitcom. All right. Anyways.
Anywho. Oh, did you look at that George Lopez clip I told you about yet?
No, I should.
Yeah, you should, man. It'd be a nice way to spend Halloween.
Hey, Koski says movies from this time are fascinating for me because they feel like actual movies at this point, but are also not fully there yet.
They're the first chubby steps of any horror baby.
And like I said, I think Caligari really does kind of it's a lot more elevated than this. I mean, this definitely has its moments, but I honestly think I have to look it up, but I think Caligari might be a couple years younger or a couple years older than this movie. Could be wrong about that. Let me look it up really quick. Anyways, do we have any other? Caligari is 1920. This is 22.
Huh. No, that's it. It's trippy. All right. I don't really have anything else, Tiki. I think that's about it.
Okay. So let's see. I know that we both like. There's a couple things that both of us sat out for, but do we want to do a little rundown?
I mean, yeah, we can. We can reminisce.
Do you have the order in front of you by any chance?
Well, in a moment, I will. I was stalling.
All right. Well, big thanks to all of us who have joined us over these 13 installments. German is underrated when talking about the evolution of film, to be honest. Yeah, absolutely, Koski. I actually got myself in kind of a German expressionism rabbit hole once when the Nick Cage movie. Oh God, Dragon, what's the movie? The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. When that
Yes, The Unbearable Weight of
yeah,
Massive Talent with Nick Cage and Pedro Pascal. Yeah.
just geeking out about Caligari.
Okay, all right. Let's go down the list. We started with Beetlejuice this year.
Okay, I think Beetlejuice is a good horror icon. I thought the episode was just kind of okay.
All right. Let's see. So then we had the Muppet Show with Alan Arkin.
Maybe the standout of the whole season. I think. I honestly think we peaked really early with that one.
Let's see. So then we had, yeah, you're right. That was rather delightful and quite quite quotable too. It's okay. I understand.
Oh God.
Of course, as a fantastic finale with Miss Piggy. But anyway, okay. So
that song gets stuck in my damn head, man.
You might be a pig. All right. Then we had Phineas and Ferb, which I covered with Jacob. We'll probably ride you about it till ad infinitum for not joining us for it. But yeah, it was it was surprisingly good, Tiki. It was again, admittedly, probably better saved for something we might be doing 2 years from now. But it was rather good though. It was the Night of the Living Pharmacist with Doofenshmirtz. So that was good. And we covered the Flintstones.
Another one that was just kind of on the okay tier. Maybe the weakest thing that we've covered all year, honestly.
I mean, I knew going into it. Unfortunately, the Flintstones don't really have necessarily the Hall of Famers for Halloween stuff. Admittedly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we had to get it in there, because we love the Flintstones. So.
But I feel like the well is kind of run dry on Flintstones content at this point.
I think we've pretty much covered the gambit on the Flintstones. Unless we find like a really good stand-up episode of the Flintstones Kids, but for what occasion, really?
Ah, yes, Flintstones Kids. Yes, indeed.
All right, let's see. So then there's
we should just do a whole podcast just covering all of the Flintstones Kids vitamin commercials.
Wait, did the kids do vitamin commercials?
Yes, you didn't know this?
Well, I mean, I knew their commercials
Dragon
for vitamins.
Like the Flintstones Kids equivalent to the Pebbles.
Huh.
Anyways.
Anyway, so then Werewolf by Night I think was a great standout. Of course.
Yeah, Werewolf by Night. I feel like the thing that the main takeaway for that for me was just, oh my God, Giacchino. Like, look, I understand you're busy with composing, man, but my God, you are as a first-time director, I was just really, really impressed with that one.
Yeah, and then we have Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Yeah, that one was a lot of fun. Dragon, it's funny because that one and Pygmalion, I kind of feel like I was hoping that those two would be like the big highlights of the season because I was really kind of banking on the pig tie-in, and I had fun doing both of them, but I don't really think they actually caught on as far as the viewership went. I think Pygmalion is probably the least viewed episode of the season, which I got to admit, kind of surprised me because I thought it was a more memorable episode, but yeah, Courage was a lot of fun for sure. Definitely a lot of nostalgia there.
And of course, so after Courage, it was King of the Hill, which we just talked about with Pygmalion. Of course, Keaton with a mustache, hard to beat. Then we had Tower of Terror for the 25th anniversary.
Yeah, that I know you did. I don't think you liked it as much as I did, and I think it probably comes down to me being more familiar with the ride. But for me, it held up quite well. It held up better than I thought it would. And I think it's probably the best. It's certainly not as good of a film as the first couple Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but just as a theme park movie, just as an adaptation of a ride, I think it might be the most faithful thing that Disney's ever done.
All right, so then there was Smiling Friends, a silly Halloween special.
Yes, which Joker and I covered. Actually, I didn't know this, but Joker's is really deep into Smiling Friends, to the point where he knows all the creators' projects and he goes way back with them online. So that was kind of funny, Dragon, because I thought I was a Smiling Friends fan, but then when me and Jokers talked about it, I was like, no, I guess I'm just kind of the casual. But Smiling Friends, Dragon, all I can say is that it has one of the all-time best punchlines in regards to PC culture and Halloween costumes. That's all I have to say about it. It's just a chef's kiss of a punchline. All right.
So then we have The Man with the Screaming Brain.
Yeah, this one was all right. I was honestly I kind of stand by what I said, where definitely the best parts about it were, the actual stuff with Bruce Campbell having that sort of like identity crisis in his head. I just feel like the movie itself, there is not nearly enough of that stuff to justify it. So at the end of the day, I was kind of disappointed with it. But, the stuff with Campbell doing his thing was fun.
God bless Bruce Campbell. Okay. So then we had Buzz Lightyear Star Command, The Slayer, which was kind of one of the interim episodes with NOSFERATU.
Yeah, surprisingly good episode. Not the most Halloween-centric episode, but I definitely think it was very good. A lot of pathos, a lot of cool imagery with the robots, kind of getting around the sensors. And again, I think the thing that really stuck out to me that episode was just how well defined that one-off Cree Summers character was. Just a really, really good one-off character there.
Yeah. I think she might have been. I think I heard she's cast in Ironheart.
Cree Summers? Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Cree Summers and Sacha Baron Cohen, I believe, were added to. I think it was Ironheart.
I heard about Sacha Baron Cohen.
You heard Ironheart for him?
Yeah, you know who he's rumored to play, right?
Well, I've heard who he's rumored to. Yes, I've heard. I just want to make sure that I heard that he was. If he's rumored for Ironheart, then she's in the same show that he's in, so that means it's Ironheart. Then, yeah.
Dragon, I tell you, if motherfucking Mephisto pops up at Ironheart, but Justin Hammer doesn't, I'm done.
I mean, it's
fucking done.
Don't be all declarative. Don't get declarative on me. Come on.
I'm just why are they not giving us the Justin Hammer, man? It's again, Hammer time, god damn it.
Well, again, Hammer time would be Armor Wars, Tiki.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, not necessarily Ironheart, but I do wonder more so. I'm wondering, why is Mephisto in Ironheart though?
Right.
Makes me think that why would he be there? I don't think he's playing Mephisto, kids. I mean, it wouldn't be bad, but I would not put. Anyway, we're drifting off focus. Point being,
so NOSFERATU. Just final thoughts. I definitely think it's a relative. It's what? Sorry.
Simpsons. There's the Simpsons.
Oh, Simpsons. Right. I'm glad we got it out of the way. For sure. I honestly think Treehouse of Horror, let's say 1 through 6, is kind of like a go-to for me in the same way that something like Sleepy Hollow or Over the Garden Wall is. And it's interesting because Casey and I, or I'm sorry, Laser Dude and I, we had this system where we could only pick one segment from each of the Treehouse of Horrors from the ones we were talking about, which was Treehouse Horror 1 through 7. And so we did that to ensure that we didn't overlap on a lot of our picks, but we still ended up overlapping on 3 out of the 5 anyways. I don't know. But yeah, it was a good time.
Yep, and then of course, lastly, NOSFERATU, which you folks have kind of sat through us talking about already, so you kind of know how we feel about it.
All right, Dragon, would you like to do the outro, my friend?
Sure. In a moment.
I'm just saying, I snubbed you from the intro, so.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right.
Also, yeah, again, big thanks to Koski Productions for joining us. Of course, I already shouted you out, but once again.
All right, folks. That's the end of tonight's spooky selection, and our spirits grow weary. But they'll be stronger than ever next time as we engage in even more Haunted Holiday Hijinks.
Dragon.
Yep.
I'm sorry. On 3. 1, 2, 3. NOSFERATU.